Hi guys, I hope you've had a great weekend. Today we're going to talk about economic indicators and what they can tell us. So, what's an economic indicator? It's a measurement of important areas of the economy that gives us a picture of the current situation and what might happen in the future. So, if we know the meaning of the certain indicator, we should be able to tell whether the economy is going up or going down. So the first one we're going to look at is GDP. This is the most important and also the single most comprehensive indicator of the health of the economy. It's like the king of all the economic indicators. And the second paragraph shows its meaning: the total market value of goods and services produced by the nation in a certain period of time, regardless whether it's a domestic firm or a foreign firm doing business in this country. So remember, it's more of which country this company is located at rather than which country this company is from. So for example, if a French company sells product in the United States, their sales will count toward GDP in the US but not France. So that this is something that most people will get confused with. Make sure that you understand GDP as a production or the sales happens in this country. And usually GDP is released quarterly and annually. In news stories, we often need to compare GDP with previous quarter or previous year. For example, if GDP is up 4% year to year, it means that the economy has grown by 4% in the past year. And always keep in mind that it's an estimate or prediction when it's first released. And when more accurate figures or numbers come out, we need to write a new story to tell the audience if the GDP number goes upward or downward. Sometimes the revisions can be really significant, so make sure that you keep up with the change. Mathematically, GDP is calculated by the formula here. C means the personal consumption expenditures. Usually we just call it consumer spending. I means gross private domestic investment. G means government consumption expenditures and gross investment. X means exports and M means imports. So GDP is a sum of consumer spending, investment, government expenditures and investment, and the net difference between exports and imports. So what does GDP tell us? If the value of production is increasing, the economy is going up, and the companies will have more job openings open so they could recruit more people to produce more products. And more people are likely to be working, so it's a happy ending for everyone. And here, I also want to note that GDP calculation is often corrected for inflation already. So the inflation in currency means that we need to pay more money for the same product. If we don't correct inflation while calculating the GDP, the increase in GDP may result from the overall price increase, even when production is not increasing. So correcting for inflation makes sure that GDP tells us about the real status of the production and economy. And that brings us to the topic of recession. 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth mean that the country is in recession. So if the GDP is going down for 2 quarters, that's half of a year, we can see that the country is in recession now. And depression is a very severe recession. Either GDP drops significantly or the job goes for a long time. As business reporters, usually we don't just define depression for the public. The government will define for us, but we can predict depression by comparing current GDP decrease and physical data in the case of past depression. And next, international trade. So in every country, fluctuations in international exports and imports are the continuing major stories. We see that almost all the time. In the past few months, there's a lot of coverage about the US and China trade war. And why is that important? Is that just a politics things, or it's actually about economy? And generally, a country would want other countries to buy more of their own products to boost our own country's own GDP. So a country would want export more, meaning that they want to sell more products to others. If a country imports more, meaning that they're buying more stuff from other countries. And if we go back to the GDP formula, the X minus M part, if we export more, it would actually have a positive impact on our GDP growth. But if we import more, the X minus M would be negative, and that would have a negative impact on the GDP growth. So, in the news stories, the terms we often see are trade deficit and trade surplus. When a country's trade with another country results in more imports than exports, we call that deficit. In this case, X minus M is negative. And the opposite situation would be trade surplus. X minus M in the formula would be positive. And now, what do we want for our own country? Trade deficit or trade surplus? Of course, we will want trade surplus so that our own GDP will be increasing. And the strength of the local currency can also affect the trade surplus and deficit. So let's say that if in the past 1 US dollar is equivalent to 6 Chinese currency yuan, and now 1 US dollar is 7 Chinese yuan. So buyers in the US would buy more goods from China than before, given now, even though they have the same amount of US dollar, they have more Chinese money in exchange. So knowing this would also help your personal finance if you have more currencies rather than just US dollar. So looking at the trend of the international trade and government policies would help you to know when to buy more US dollar or when to sell more US dollar. For example, in the past few months, there was a lot of tension between US and China because of trade war. I knew that China would, of course, want to sell more products to Americans, so the government would adjust the currency rate to make our money weaker. So in that case, I needed to buy more US dollar with my Chinese yuan right away because I know that in a few weeks later, the Chinese currency would have less purchasing power. But now it seems that our presidents are reaching some agreement, so I can hold off trading Chinese currency for a little while. The unemployment rate is also important because it's a matter of the economic's health. Intuitively, we would want the unemployment rate to be low, but sometimes an extremely low number can also be bad. This is because the calculation of unemployment rate does not include people who are not working and are also not looking for a job. So when the economy is really bad, people might lose faith in getting a new job and they just stop seeking. And that makes the unemployment rate lower as well. So it is important for us reporters to figure out what is really going on in the local community. My suggestion would be if you could have a rough idea of the trends of unemployment rate in the past 5 years and link the ups and downs to the expansion or the closing of local business, and then you would be able to tell if the unemployment rate is off or within a normal range. Another important indicator is inflation. It means that there's too much money on the market for the same or even less amount of goods. So the value of the currency is lower than before. So maybe last month I can get a mug for $5, but now I need to pay for $8 for the exact same thing. And usually for us consumers, there is always a lag between price rise and salary rise. So as the price goes up, but I'm still making the same amount of money, and that means I could buy less stuff than I used to. Personally, I haven't stayed long enough in Lansing or in United States to say anything about the inflation here. But in China, I think in the past 10 years, the inflation significantly went up. Larger cities would have a faster and stronger reaction to the inflation. Everything just become more and more expensive. But in small towns, inflation takes a while to affect local economy and depends on the supply and the demands for the local market. The different industries or different category of products may also be affected differently. So think about your own experience. Do you think the price goes up considerably over the past few years? Is there any item or industry that stands out to you? And as the same pattern can be found both in Lansing and your hometown, what's the difference? And we have two more indicators for inflation. I think the reading has a glossary for you to understand what CPI and PPI means. I just need you to remember that the increasing CPI and PPI means stronger inflation, and which means our purchase power become weaker than before. And finally, a few other key indicators in the United States. The first one, auto sales. It's a key indicator of the economy because US is traditionally the largest auto market. And the auto industry provides a well-paid, sophisticated manufacturing jobs. So if the auto industry is doing well, it means that our economy is doing well right now since people are making big purchases. And also the economy is also likely to go well in the near future. So usually the near future would be 2 to 3 years. The second one on the list, durable goods orders, are orders for long-term purchases that will last more than 3 years. It indicates how big the factories will be in the future and how confident businesses are. Increase in those orders also indicates economic growth in the near future. Also, consumer confidence index measures whether consumers are optimistic or pessimistic about the economy. Retailers and manufacturers are often referred to CCI to make decisions. So that's it for today. We really have a lot more to cover, but since some of you do not have economics or business background at all, I tried to tune down a little bit, but let me know if this is too much or not enough for you. The key point of knowing this indicator is for you to tell what's going to happen next, and this gives you power to predict economic trends. And these predictions not only would make you a good business reporter, but also it helps you with your own investment decisions. So that's it for today. I'll see you next week.